Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Paulette Lee, and I'm the producer for this webinar with Microsoft. Thank you everyone for joining. This webinar should be about 45 minutes in length. We have some great speakers today to talk about cloud and endpoint security. We are broadcasting this through Microsoft Teams, so by participating in the webinar, you are consenting to the fact that you are being included in the recording. The recording will be shared with you in about a week for those that registered. If you haven't registered and you've joined us, please do so now with the registration link that will be in the chat window. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat window. We do have a Q&A at the end of the webinar where all of our speakers will be available to answer your questions. You can actually come off mute at that point and have a discussion with our speakers as well. So I am now going to turn it over to Sloan to introduce the speakers and get us started. Sloan.
Thank you, Paulette, and thank you everyone who's attending live today or who may be watching this later as a recording. So thank you for registering and attending and listening to us today. We're very excited to be speaking about Defender for Endpoint and XDR today, and we have some fantastic speakers lined up. So of course, as you listen to them after I introduce them and they get started, please throw any comments or questions up into the Q&A and chat. I'll be monitoring those, and at the end, I will be helping by not only using questions that were submitted previously, but also questions that are submitted live to tee up some Q&A at the end. And that is always fun to hear those answers from our speakers today. So with us today, we have Norb Voss from PwC, and he is our EDR expert, and we're super happy to have you here, Norb. Thank you so much. I know we're looking forward to your insights. We also have Manu Subaya and from PwC. He is our XDR subject matter expert or subject matter specialist, and we are happy to have you here as well, Manu. And we are pleased to have Emmanuel Bernal from Microsoft. He's a cloud solution architect for security, and he has obviously, especially across both of these topics, and will be joining in the conversation today. We're super excited. Thank you for posting the LinkedIn for all of us. As I mentioned, we want this to be a dialogue. So I see a few more people trickling in. So please throw in the Q&A. Anything that you have questions or comments on, and I will be using that as well as anything submitted ahead of time for at the end our Q&A. So at this time, I'd love to hand it over to the team and we can jump into the meat of our webinar today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sloan. I'm sharing my screen in a moment and we'll get started. Sloan, can you confirm that my screen is coming through?
Yes, we can see it in presentation mode. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for the introduction and welcome everyone. The next 45 minutes, we're going to be talking about three major topics. We'll start with multi-cloud needs, challenges in the realm of cybersecurity. And then we'll get into a little bit of Defender for Endpoint and Defender for Cloud, two very important members of the Microsoft security family, and also key contributors to Microsoft XDR that Manu is going to be talking about. And after that, I will be handing it over to Manu to talk about how Microsoft and PwC are teaming up to deliver Sentinel and XDR services and solutions to our clients. And as Sloan said, our chat is open. Please don't be afraid and pepper us with your questions, and hopefully we'll get to answer all of them by the end of this webinar. So let's start with the multi-cloud environments, needs, challenges, why companies go down that path. PwC has recently released its 2023 Digital Trust Insights report, and having spoken to hundreds of cybersecurity leaders across the industry, one of the key findings that we saw is that over 2/3 are operating in what we call a hybrid environment. That means they have a little bit of everything. They have Azure, they have Google Cloud, AWS, and a lot of them either on-prem. For some, this is the result of inorganic growth. For others, the stickiness of legacy infrastructure. And also it can be by design, as some of them would just like to avoid locking on to one vendor. So let's look at what are some of the cybersecurity benefits and needs of an environment like that. Of course, luckily, there's no shortage of security solutions that offer capabilities across multiple cloud environments. That goes for both applications and services. However, this does require increased governance, oversight across all of those cloud environments. This isn't always an easy task. Single pane of visibility, an expression that you will hear more than once today, both from me and Manu. That is another key requirement for success. How do I make sure that I will be able to spend my time on high-value security activities instead of trying to normalize, aggregate, and make sense of data from various sources that don't necessarily speak the same language? I think that's a challenge that many of us run into day in, day out. And lastly, how do I assess, understand, and interpret risk across multiple environments? And as an added bonus, what if I still have significant on-prem presence? What can I do then? So truth be told, we wouldn't be here if we didn't believe that we have a solid answer for all of those questions. But before we get into that, let's go through what I like to call the scary part first. For most organizations, the challenges go beyond the technical. We are holding this webinar in an uncertain economic environment, and I'm sure that you, much like other organizations across the globe, are asked to do more with less. And as you probably have experienced, large-scale economic social events economic events create a ripple effect that almost always results in significant increase of adverse cyber events. And I'm gonna ask Emmanuel, my friend, could you tell us a little bit about what Microsoft has seen when it aligned news headlines against cyber attacks and other threats across the globe?
No, thanks, Norbert. That's a great question. Thanks for turning it over to me, Norbert, in this webinar. So basically, now everyone loves news. Waking up in the morning and looking at your cell phone and say, what is the news that we have today? Maybe every single day is different. Political things, World Cup, now with the pandemic, a lot of health stories, but we need to have the facts before that. That's something that we do as security. On security, you cannot rely on false stories on social networking. So that's the reason we combine different factors. And thanks for bringing that out, Norbert, because it's really important nowadays, still really important, the human and the machine factor, I call it all the time. So it's human beings working on telemetry, on data, on solutions, as you were mentioning. On the other hand, we combine automated things inside security, like artificial intelligence, all the machine learning, all the stuff that we know. It's in the back in something called threat intelligence. So that's the reason we had this data to put together. And thanks for putting the source there. That is our Microsoft Digital Defense Report, because every single year we put together all this data that you maybe are not aware if you have a solution of Microsoft, but we still coming with a lot of facts like emails. We want to come how the trend markets of security is coming on email. So we want to give you the factual data of what is coming. And this is thanks to threat intelligence. We are combining different factors that you will be talking later, you and Manu, on this webinar, how combined we get to this, right? And you also only to highlight, to close my message here, Norbert, as you can see on the months that Norbert is mentioning, it always tagged to a specific factor around the world, right? That one is pandemic, right? The other one is the crisis at Europe, or maybe at the war at Ukraine. So it's very important to track that, because every single thing that comes around the world, attackers and hackers are ready. So our Microsoft team in all together with the partners are ready, combined, to take this data. So thanks for bringing it out, Norbert. So I get it back to you based on where we put this. It's our factual data with all these threat intelligence benefits that we have in the cloud.
Absolutely. And from my personal experience at the beginning of COVID, and I can tell just from the graphs when that happened, endpoint security, which is my realm, has experienced an incredible amount of attacks as our physical endpoints, our workstations, really moved outside of the corporate offices. Every organization had to scramble how to secure it, how to make sure that people can do their jobs from the confines of their home, but do it in a way that is secure, not only for them, the organization, but also for that organization's clients and customers. So it is incredible what we've gone through the last 2+ years, and what we were able to fend off, sometimes not, but recover from. So the human element, as you said, always key. All right, so moving on to really the solution part of this webinar. Today's all about Defender for Endpoint and Defender for Cloud, as well as Sentinel and XDR. But I wanted to give you an overview of the Microsoft security family, just so you understand what are some of those solutions that Microsoft has grouped together and made sure that they're able to talk to each other. They're able to give you a unified solution, no matter how many of you no matter how many of those solutions you will end up using. You will get that native integration across the board. So starting with Microsoft Entra, which is the identity and access management solution, very hot topic nowadays. Priva and Purview for privacy and data governance management, respectively. Intune, which allows you to see and manage your assets across any cloud environment or on-prem, for that matter. And of course, our guests of honor today, Defender and Sentinel. So mind you, these are some of the fastest evolving technologies in the market, meaning today's wish list might just become tomorrow's capabilities. So I highly recommend that you keep an eye out for any updates coming from Microsoft. I know for a fact that the last 2 years, at least in my area, and Emmanuel knows this very well because I keep bothering him with it, I know that all of these capabilities within EDR have increased tremendously. It's been an incredible journey, and honestly, I don't see it stopping. So let's start with Defender for Endpoint, probably my personal favorite. COVID upended most things. Our workforce had to start working remotely, and organizations had to scramble to keep operations running while keeping the environment secure. Now, when you move thousands and thousands of physical endpoints outside of your offices, a cultural and technological shift will take place. Protecting those endpoints in the home of your workers, as I said, making sure that they can securely connect, becomes a key challenge. Education is still key, and on the tech side, one of the best tools that can help you increase endpoint security is Defender for Endpoint. And we are not looking for just an AV. That time has passed. We want hardening capabilities. We want AI and machine learning supported operations. We want automation, vulnerability management. And we want all of these across any environment, bar none. So Defender allows you to see not only the vulnerabilities but impacting your endpoints, but the prioritization based on context and external data. So you can decide where to focus first. How can I make the greatest impact in terms of risk mitigation? Emmanuel was talking about threat intel. That is one of the components that feeds into this to make sure that you get the best and the latest to decide on your focus. But all that is going to result in in chasing your tail if you're not able to harden your endpoints, which of course will decrease your vulnerability exposure. So you're reaping benefits on both sides. And Defender for Endpoint provides just that. We call that attack surface reduction. And while endpoint security isn't an AV anymore, or only an AV, it is still a critical component. And we are moving away from signature-based antiviruses, and that couldn't have come a better time, to be honest. Defender provides a real-time and behavior-based solution. That is very important. No more matching of signatures against certain events. It is intelligent enough, so to speak, to stop attackers early on. And of course, it comes with these automatic attack disruption capabilities. We saw this and we use this often, and it's an incredible capability when you see a ransomware attacking an infrastructure, an endpoint, and Defender is able to stop it before it takes hold. So that is the point where time is critical, and you want to make sure that you stop it in its path, and you prevent it from laterally moving around the environment and infecting your entire asset landscape. But of course, you can't always stop an attack, unfortunately. Sometimes your only option is responding to what's already happened. So Defender gives you a whole set of tools, including total isolation, direct remote control, direct access. It also provides you with top-of-the-line investigative capabilities, and often we come to the unfortunate realization that the attackers have been lurking in those systems for a long time. So having the ability to look back in time for months and see what has been happening in your environment, connecting those dots together becomes incredibly important for rooting out all of the threat actors in that environment. And of course, your tools are complemented with auto investigation and remediation capabilities. It's almost like having a Jarvis to your Tony Stark SOC analysts, and making sure that what can be automated can actually happen and it is automatically executed. So your human resources, your human analysts can really focus on the things where automation is not possible yet. And of course, lastly, when you need that little extra help, that's when Microsoft threat experts can jump in and help out. Now, moving on to our next solution here in the Defender family, Defender for Cloud. So Endpoint, I like to say Endpoint is really for your workstations, your servers that are not provisioned by Azure or cannot be rolled under MDC, strictly speaking. But it's a little more than that. Defender for Cloud gives you three major distinct areas: development operations or DevOps, security posture management, and threat detection. Secure DevOps is one of the hottest topics nowadays. When most of your server environment lives in the cloud, developing for them will pose a number of challenges, especially in light of certain breaches in recent years, such as SolarWinds. So MDC is the tool that is going to make your developers' life a lot easier. It gives you single pane of visibility into your DevOps security posture. What does that mean? Your administrators will have full visibility into your DevOps inventory, and the security posture pre-production application code, which includes findings from that code and the secrets and the open source dependency vulnerability scans, will be made available to you. You will also be able to strengthen your cloud resource configurations through the development lifecycle. This is important. You can enable security of security as infrastructure as code templates and container images to minimize cloud misconfigurations. I think that's a big challenge nowadays in DevOps. And it also allows security administrators to focus on critical evolving threats by feeding that threat information into your secure DevOps pipeline and giving you the visibility that is really, honestly, unprecedented. If you think back a few years ago, this was not as mature as it is right now. And also prioritization of critical issues, assigning ownership of findings to the developers. It is an important step. It's often overlooked. And what MDC does for you, it allows you to feed that information, feed that ownership of findings into the tool that the developers are using every day, the tools that they love, the tools that they use to develop the applications. Though that information about security findings, vulnerabilities, and such will be fed into those tools. That is an incredibly important quality of life change, and it is an experience that helps your developers address security findings in their code much easier. The next big component is security posture management. That we call that CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, which provides you with hardening guidance that helps you efficiently and effectively improve your cloud security. Defender for Cloud continually assesses your resources, your subscriptions, and your organization for security issues, and shows you an aggregated score that allows you to focus on what's most important from a risk perspective, from an exposure perspective. And our last key component, closely aligned, I would say, with the Defender for Endpoint concept, is threat detection in the cloud. That is a solution that allows you to establish a connection to AWS, to GCP, and basically outside of your Azure cloud, and extend your Defender capabilities that you already know and love to use within your Azure environment onto other cloud environments. This is a very important component for hybrid or multi-cloud environments. And of course, with Azure Arc, you can also onboard on-prem devices such as your Linux mainframes into Azure, manage them much like your AWS and GCP resources from a single pane of glass, and also most importantly, extend your Defender capabilities to your on-prem solutions or resources. So that's the overview for Defender for Cloud. And in summary, both Defender and Defender for Cloud provide you with leading security protections for your workstations, for your servers, and it doesn't matter where they live. It can be in AWS, it can be GCP, it can be on-prem. So for the next few minutes, let's look at how PwC can help you get there. So we'll be talking about two major components for both solutions: deployment or activation and operations. For Defender for Endpoint, the first big hurdle that one must clear is baselining. How do I understand where do I need protection? How do I understand where my assets are? Is my CMDB complete and accurate? These are challenges that most of our clients have to deal with day in and day out. And that's where we come in and help. We help them inventory their assets and establish their target deployment list. Assets that must receive Defender for endpoint. For some operating systems, you just need to turn it on. Certain Windows versions have these baked in and ready to go. For some, such as Linux, an agent has to be deployed, and you have to set up a deployment environment to pull those resources in to extend Defender for endpoint capabilities. But of course, deployment is not the only key activity. We must ensure that your future endpoints will be protected by default. We do this via baking Defender for endpoint into your golden images, into your business as usual or BAU processes, making sure that whenever you release a new asset, let it be a workstation, let it be a server, they are already equipped with these protections. And we do this across any cloud or on-prem environment. As I said, for on-prem environments, we deploy Azure Arc, and that will help you pull those assets into your Azure inventory. It's a very, very, very powerful tool. And of course, some stakeholders are more interested in compliance. How do I know where my coverage gaps are? How do I know if I do not have a Defender in certain corners of the organization? So to tackle that problem, we connect Defender solutions to visualizations such as Power BI or Tableau, and we are able to track that compliance coverage across the environment. And for operations, our last topic for Defender Cloud and Defender for Endpoint today, the key components are, for endpoint, your playbooks. How do I make sure that all of my analysts are doing everything the same way? They are following the same procedures. And for managed services, how do I ensure that my managed services provider can deal with my solutions in a tool agnostic way? PwC does just that. We don't care if you have a mix of solutions for security. We're able to tackle all of the tools, all of the solutions, make sure that they're integrated together, and provide you with the best possible security services. On the Defender for Cloud side, a lot is about integration, activating the solution, developing queries in Sentinel or your SIM solution, and of course, integrating into the DevOps pipeline. From an operations perspective, visibility is going to be key. Implementing your risk-driven dashboards, making sure that we are responding to the risks that your organization cares about. And of course, one of my favorites, integrating cloud security posture management into your processes. So this is PwC services as we team up with Microsoft to deliver these solutions in a nutshell. I'll hand it over to Manu right now, and he will talk about XDR and Sentinel and how Defender and other tools complement a traditional SIM to become something else.
Thank you, Norb. Hi, everybody. So next slide, Norb. So what are the challenges organizations face as they adopt a multi-cloud on-prem strategy, especially in the security operations environment? So during my discussions with some of the senior management and CISOs, the biggest issue is the too many alerts, right? Or too many ghosts to chase, and having to maintain a very large SOC team. The other one is the lack of end-to-end visibility or a kill chain. When an attack happens, not having the visibility from all the way from the time it starts to the end, right? And then the last one is the lack of a single pane of glass view, right? A big picture view. So why did these challenges come up? Norb did touch on a couple of them. Either organizations are growing inorganically or organically, And because of that, the solutions get added up. And as solutions get added up, they have to be processed, and you kind of build technology skills in one area, and then it just keeps on growing massively, and then you get exposed to vulnerabilities, right? It could also be because of external pressure, right? Regulatory, social, or economic pressures, right? With these different challenges, let's keep that in mind as we discuss XDR and how XDR addresses these, right? So next slide now. Yeah, so XDR is a relatively new term in the industry, right? And each people have their own type of definition depending on what they are trying to market. It is important to set the stage here and understand what XDR is before we proceed, right? So XDR, Gartner defines XDR as a threat detection incident response tool that natively integrates multiple security products into a cohesive security operation system that unifies all the license components, right? Couple of points to keep in mind here, right, is natively integrates multiple security products. Nob, you want to go back one more slide? One more. One more back. Yeah, thank you. So a couple of points, right? One is natively integrates multiple security products, and the other one is the process of pulling together all of the different components and telemetry and contextual information together to provide a comprehensive visibility and protection, right? So XDR not only provides visibility in one place, but it is designed to kind of piece together all of these different stages of attacks, right, based on analytics. Now, rather than receiving hundreds of alerts, XDR alerts will be consolidated into a high fidelity, highly detailed, actionable alerts that includes a timeline of the attack kill chain. Now, this would immensely help in several areas, like reducing alert fatigueness, alert storms, pinpointing root causes, and expediting the remediation. So at a high level, you see there are two components here. One is the Sentinel component, which is a cloud-native SIEM that's been in the market for almost 4 years, and it's doing very, very well. And then that provides more of a detection capabilities, while the Defender suite of products that M365 component of it and what Nob talked about, the endpoint and the cloud, along with other Defender products, providing more of the Defender, prevention and the protection capabilities, right? So that's a big stage. At this point, I probably would want to pull in a manual and kind of talk about from a Microsoft perspective. How does XDR play into the game?
Yeah, thanks, Manu. So I will connect your previous messages, friends, based on you, Manu and Norbert. So we were talking about previously the endpoint, right? When we say the endpoint, it's the laptop, the Windows 10, Windows 7 in the past, Windows XP. And then, for example, Linux devices start to grow, Mac OS devices also, but I will call it more from the operating system as well, right? That's now how Microsoft is seeing the endpoint. Not only the laptop, the workstation, as Norbert and Manuel were mentioning before. Now your mobile phone is another endpoint, right? So we need to have different controls, behaviors with the COVID. I remember a lot of people, like, can I borrow your laptop? And then they start doing things, but you don't have an antivirus. So we were used to a specific tool based on firmware, on specific signatures, the negative security model. Now they then start to evolve to the hybrid security model. So that's where we're seeing things. That's where I totally love the slide that PwC put together this time, because it's not only the endpoint by itself. We are covering different things: identity, applications, behavioral, threat intelligence, connecting data. For me and for our perspective, we're trying to see XDR as a whole platform. Also, there is another challenge, Manu, to mention here in the field right now, and I think will be in the next 5 years, different vendors by silos, right? So we have isolated areas. So I'm in charge of the antivirus. I'm in charge of the identity piece. So right now, the XDR message will get together all those vendors, all those solutions. So, and again, I'm not talking about replacing everything, right, with Microsoft solutions. We need to create a whole platform, right? We have amazing solutions on the market. So you can connect this XDR story more from a security strategy, Manu. Thanks for that.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's spot on, right, Manuel? It also, I mean, just like what you said, I mean, it's the ability for the product to capture different stages and kind of stitch everything together, and providing that one big story is the biggest plus of having an XDR type of solution, right? So, great. Going to the next slide, right? We want to go to the next, yeah. So this slide talks to how PwC's threat detection and response practice is using XDR to monitor, detect, respond to client threats, right? Now, using PwC's and Microsoft's XDR combined behavior analytics and comprehensive automation, and along with the expert threat intel platform, the service provides like a threat visibility that reduces noise, reduces the effort on the security team, and then lowers their mean time to respond to minutes, right? I've seen it in multiple clients that way. Now, PwC's solution is predominantly using Sentinel as its core TDR engine, right? Using the custom analytics solutions that we develop, and then also the automations to correlate data from various data sources and the XDR sources, right? The idea is to produce like a set of actionable alerts that can be bubbled up, and the ones that the SOC team can really respond to effectively, right? So for example, instead of having like around 200 alerts, you would end up with like around 5 or 10 alerts that are really true positive, right? And that can be followed up on. That's the key powerful message here. Now, how we achieve this is by focusing on two approaches. One is a threat-based use case development, and then the other one is by correlation and enrichment, right? Now, the enrichment is also twofold, because you could have the enrichment on the alert generation component of it, as well as enrichment and to optimize the incident response, right? Now, PwC uses the global threat intel platform in-house, which has its own, and various other sources to kind of enrich that part and then send it to Sentinel that will actually kind of create an actionable alert by correlating all of these, right? We also provide threat hunting using the IOCs from PwC's GTI group to provide an automated process to identify any potential threats and behaviors. Now, in terms of incident response, enrichment will provide details that the investigator will be able to use to optimize their response and investigation process. Now, this accentuates the self-healing automation process that can be built into Sentinel. And it also leverages Sentinel's anomaly detection and machine learning capabilities when using these use case strategies. Now, going to the next slide. You want to move to the next slide? Now, this slide talks to a common industry threats that we see most of the clients being worried about, right? And how XDR is able to help and identify and respond to it. Now, for example, ransomware. Nob did talk about it briefly, right? The ransomware threat is one of the major concerns that for almost all of the clients. The key alert here, or the telemetry that is used most here, is from endpoints, right? And Defender for Endpoint provides powerful insights here, right? And the key thing is that because of the XDR solution, it's not only Defender for endpoint information that they get all of the other type of information also, telemetry also, that can be correlated and come up to a much more effective solution. Another example I would say is the insider threat, which is another key concern for majority of the clients. For insider threat, the predominant case is the user component of it, right? And the focus of telemetry would be identity based, and Defender for Identity works seamlessly with Sentinel's entity behavior and the UEBA component of it to kind of find anomalies based on the user risk. So there are different. So the key message here is that for different threats that the industry is facing, having an end-to-end visibility and the product, and they're able to integrate together into Sentinel and XDR is a very, very powerful message, and it's much more effective in terms of providing actionable alerts, right, and reducing the overload on the operations team. All right, moving on to the next slide. So this slide talks about the service offerings and how the TDR, PwC's TDR services uses XDR, right? So if you see here, there are three main components of it. One is the engineering, managed services, and the add-ons. So the engineering component includes the enablement activities for a comprehensive service of deployment for the Microsoft tech stack, as well as selective ones based on each of the client needs. So it's very customized. So you can actually have a client saying, hey, kind of moving a SIM migration or brand new build, right? And now in terms of the operations part, right, you can have a 25/7, 365 days coverage, or it could be customized by hours and geolocation. Somebody might say, I just need a coverage from 9 to 5, right? And then some say, I want only certain locations. So it can be customized based on their customer needs. But the key thing is the add-on services. It's like an a la carte of services and products that can be integrated to any of these, either engineering and the operations component of it. Some of the compelling value-added solution, like threat hunting or incident response, can be added to this. Now, advanced automation is very interesting also, because the amount of engagements and efforts that PwC has with clients, we were able to build multiple libraries of automations and playbooks built over multiple experiences that can be leveraged, and it's very, very compelling in terms of value-added solutions for clients. Right? So in closing, I'd like to think that PwC XDR and Sentinel solution working along with Microsoft is able to continuously evaluate the security posture of the clients, and again, some leading industry practices and the current threat coverages, including vulnerabilities. This provides the visibility and reduces the effort on the organization and their operations team, right? So I think that's all I had in terms of the last slide. I'll turn it over back to Sloan, and then we'll get into questions.
Yes, thank you. So we had, thank you all for listening, and we did have some questions submitted ahead of time. And so I think they actually blend with what you were just talking about, Manu and Manu. If you, and I'll let obviously Emmanuel and Norb, you're welcome to weigh in on this, but I'm going to combine some questions. So maybe let's start, because it's close to what you're just talking about. What's the difference between XDR and SIM? Okay. And I think you can talk about it and cover it from an overall coverage type. There could also be a functional coverage. Someone asked about just the delivery model difference, data storage automation. You could hit on all of those topics. Okay. Yeah, so this is a very common question, and I think it's a very interesting question, because if you think about it from a technical capability perspective, both SIM and XDR are very similar, but at the end of the day, serves completely different purposes, right? At an overall coverage type, a SIM enables unlimited customization of edge use cases, right? Sentinel, being the SIM solution, is able to ingest data from Microsoft and not Microsoft solutions. So it provides a much more comprehensive end-to-end attack visibility, right? And it is more, SIM is more of a detection type of protection, while XDR is very much a incident response, and it's primarily focused on Defender products, right? Defender type of products and alerts and telemetry, and it is very preventive in type of protection, right? Now, from a functional, if you're looking at it from a functional coverage angle, SIM provides specific several functionalities that includes threat detection, compliance, storage, and reporting, while XDR focuses primarily on the threat detection and investigation process, right? Now, data storage-wise, if you think of it, SIM acts as a central data store for security organizations and for long-term storage and keeping compliance data as such, right? While as XDR accesses data from other sources and it stores temporarily for the analysis purpose only. So SIM is for more of a long-term requirements and compliance requirements, right? Now, from an automation also, SIM can provide highly customized orchestration, right? While as XDR has the pre-packaged tools and playbooks that can be leveraged, right? Now, SIM is more comprehensive, XDR but the key thing is to if we are using a solution that combines these two, it's much more powerful and much more effective, right? That's what So on the heels of that, and thank you for answering that, on the heels of that, someone asked, and I think the implied answer was there, but someone may want to weigh in, when should you use XDR?
So XDR is mostly, if you already have a SIM in place, then the team is looking to kind of enhance their analysis, right? Or enhance their time to resolve or time to investigate, then you can use an XDR. So working XDR and SIM, if it is working together, that's when you get the biggest bang for the buck, right? If you're purely using XDR, you might not have all of this effectiveness, right? So, and then also if you are actually having a manual and an automated process to critical threats, I think it's much more effective also. Right? It basically increases the productivity of an analyst and an operation team in general, reducing the response time, right? So you can use it together. You should use it together if possible. Much more bang for the buck, I'd say.
That's fantastic. Okay, so thank you for giving us that explicit answer. I know someone was interested in that. I'm going to close the questions with one last question, which I think is an interesting one, which is, can you consider, or can I consider, multiple or mixes of technology solutions to build an XDR solution?
Yep. So yes, you can. But typically what we have seen is that when you have multiple solutions, like, I mean, each of them will be a best of the breed type of solutions. It might not be the best case to integrate all of them. So that's why we see that if it's from a single vendor like a Microsoft and they have all of these solutions for defenders, it's much more better to integrate together. And along with Sentinel, it integrates seamlessly for detection and response. So it's much more effective and powerful if you have it go with a single type of solutions.
Fantastic. Well, I said that was going to close up our questions and answers. I just want to say thank you again to all of our fantastic speakers. This has been a really jam-packed session today of information and very enlightening on some specific points around Defender for Endpoint and XDR. I love the Q&A. Thank you for the answers, Manu, and thank you, Norb, and thank you, Emmanuel, for the discussion today. I know this will be valuable for those that attended live, as well as for those that are watching this on replay. So thank you again for joining, and I'll turn it over to Paulette for any last-minute items. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sloan, and all speakers. We did post a short survey in the chat window, so we would really appreciate it if you could fill that out. It takes about 1 minute to help us do better in the future and to hear from you on other topics that you'd like to hear from us about. So this concludes today's webinar. Again, as mentioned at the top of the hour, we will send out the recordings in about 7 to 10 days. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, speakers, again, and everyone. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.